What's up, everyone? My name is Alex Bass, and I'm the host and producer of the Life is a Tour podcast, where I have candid conversations with my BIPOC colleagues celebrating and navigating their experiences within the music industry. On today's episode, we are joined by a powerhouse in the world of live event production. With over 12 years of experience, she's a trailblazer in our industry. She's worn many hats, such as executive event producer, programming producer, and show caller, and her impressive career highlights speak for themselves. From serving as an associate producer for Super Bowl Live 53 to producing iconic events like the 2023 United Masters and Grammys Independent Celebration, as well as JP Morgan and Chase's Advancing Black Wealth Tour. She's proven herself as a force to be reckoned with and has set her sights on becoming one of the top Black female executives in the live event production space. Please welcome to the show, Brittany Barnett. Brittany,
I need to get used to that.
yes, you do. How are you today?
I am doing well. Excited to be on your
Thank you
podcast.
for being here. I always like to start off with like how we met, and just so everyone knows, we actually recently just connected via LinkedIn randomly.
Power of LinkedIn.
Yes. And it's just always nice to connect with other Black women within the event production space. As you know, this show is mostly around the music space, but you're in the live event production. So tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are today.
Okay, so been in the industry for a little over 10 years now. And every time I get asked this question, I kind of laugh at myself because normally people's introduction to this space is very untraditional.
Mhm.
I didn't go to school for it. It wasn't my major. I'll tell the funny story and I'll give you the honest truth of how I got into the industry. Right out of college, went to University of Memphis. This is around 2008. Had a friend that worked for the Memphis Grizzlies NBA team in Memphis, Tennessee. And he was like, hey, we're doing auditions for like our in-game entertainment squad. So, that's when you go to the games, people throw out the t-shirts and all that stuff. They're like, we're doing auditions for that crew. You should come. I know you used to play basketball. It might be something that you might enjoy.
Yeah.
I went to the auditions and I'm 5'2". Okay. So I auditioned for their dunking, like Sky Squad team. Girl, it was a mess. I went and made a complete fool of myself and I laughed about it. But they were like, you know what, Britt? The fact that you came and auditioned, you did not make that dunk team, girl, but we're going to find a position for you, like our mascot handler, and you can work with the production team and picking contestants and stuff. So that was my introduction to this event space. Like that was the door that sort of opened it for me. And since then, it's just been a snowball effect since 2008.
I love that. I love that. And sometimes
Yeah.
you just
Yeah.
gotta go for it because you just never know where the opportunity is going to lead you. Tell us a little bit about some of these roles that you've had, show caller, event producer.
Mhm.
Tell us what those roles entail.
Sure. I'll start with show caller. I think that's a role that probably a lot of people wouldn't know unless you're in the industry,
Mhm.
right? Specifically in the live event space. And it's a role that you probably would never see. We're either sitting front of house, back of house, behind the stage, but we are the person that I call it the conductor of the orchestra, right? The
Yeah.
show caller specifically does a multitude of things. One is the owner of the run a show, which I'm pretty sure most of your viewers probably know what a run a show is. Cue sheet run a show, the owner of that. And my main responsibility as a show caller, especially in live shows. So typically, if you have screens,
Mhm.
any stage programming, right, where there's a lot of movement from point A to point B, graphics have to go up on screen, the audio has to play, the walk track has to go on, camera shot, all the stuff. The show caller is on headset, on comms with all of the different operators yelling out, calling out these cues to all of these people that make every single action happen at a very specific scheduled time in the cue sheet. So that's what a show caller is. I just recently, well, not recently, I've been a show caller for probably 5 years now, and it is one of the most stressful.
Yes, it is.
I know when you and I briefly talked, you're like, I show call, but it is so nerve wracking.
It is. It's exciting though, but you really
Yeah.
do have the entire show in your hands.
Yes. So I sit in that capacity as a show caller, and then I also serve executive producer, programming producer. Sometimes those can be combined into one thing, but usually in that role, I'm overseeing all of the elements of a production or a show. So that is client facing,
Hmm.
working with AV, working with the content team, working with talent, building out the thematic of the show. So really overseeing the movement of the entire show and the production of the show from start to finish. So seeing the full vision of the show outside of show calling it as well. So usually executive producer and show caller, they sometimes work synonymously just because you built the show. So you might as well
Right.
call it, right? So,
Exactly.
those are the two roles that I have sat in and have been running with for quite some time up until this point.
And what was the point in your career that kind of led you to being in these roles and learning more about these roles? What was the pivot for you?
I started out on the agency side
Hmm.
and I was a field marketing manager. And so you probably are familiar on the agency side, you do more of the traditional brand experiential activations, less of like production technical stuff. And I started out as a field marketing manager and learning the ropes, just learning the ins and outs of event operations. And it literally was like a natural progression into then I went to like stage management stuff. And I was like, okay, I like doing this. Like, all right. So stage manager, then you start to meet the other players, right? So at the time, I didn't know what a show caller was, but I probably was working hand in hand with the show caller on
Right.
events. And so I was like, okay, I've learned, how to be a stage manager. Like, what's another role that I could be in this space? And so those are the pivots for me. Once I started to learn the ins and outs of all the different roles and kind of the capacity in which they sit and the different types of events that I could be in those roles, that's when I started to pivot. I really did start to learn to love to be in more of the live event production space and less of like the public facing brand activation spaces where you're not dealing with so much of the technical stuff. So that was really the pivot for me. It's like once I stage managed it, it was like, okay,
Yeah.
yep, that's the side I want to be
Yeah,
on.
same, same, same.
Yeah.
I absolutely I love it and I love being on the stage and there's something about just knowing that you have control of this and you are making this show run. And if
Yeah.
you fuck it up, then it all,
Yep.
it trickles down. It all comes down to
And
you.
I have fucked it up a couple times, let me tell you.
Listen, same, same. And everyone, it happens. That is part of growth. It is necessary.
Yes, yes,
So,
yes.
while we're talking about these roles and how you pivoted into them on your journey, how often did you see women and how often did you actually see Black women within these spaces and working these different types of high profile events?
Not often, not often at all. In my earlier parts of career, starting out as a stage manager, before I even got into show calling, it was in the conference spaces, your trade show spaces, your corporate internal, like, year end summits and all that stuff. And I did not see much of any women. If I did, they were potentially maybe on like the loading crew, right? So
Hmm.
more of your labor team, but not on your in-show AV team. And so that tended to be the case often. Even now, I'm usually the only woman, let alone a Black woman,
Yep.
right? Sitting with the show team amongst a bunch of men, and back then, 2015-ish, it was white men,
Yeah.
right? It was the Caucasian men, the white men, the older white men who were looking at me like, "Girl, what you think you about to come here and
And tell me what to do.
run our show?" Right. Like, this is what we got. Like, so it was very much a lot of that. I did not see a lot of women at all, let alone Black and brown. So, I know we'll dive deeper into that, but to answer the question, simply put, I didn't see us
Yeah.
at all. Yeah.
Same, and that's part of my story as well, doing a lot of these festivals and working as the stage manager and as I progressed into production manager, very few just us on the team in general, and then within these higher up roles and as far as like being in charge of a crew and in charge of the show
Mhm.
essentially very few of us and yeah definitely got some crazy looks some attitudes
Yeah.
like what do you
Resistance.
resistance yes like
Yeah.
what do you mean I have to not just listen to this woman but this Black woman and even on the road
Yeah.
even touring I've had situations where I'm stage managing. So I am managing the stage. The stage is mine. So if I need this
Yep.
done, if I need this spiked, if I need this deck moved here, this is what I need to get this show done. I don't
Mhm.
need you to talk back because I talk back
Yep.
too.
You have
Yeah.
to. You have to set some sort of presence for yourself, because they will run amok.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
And so how have you kinda navigated that? What are some ways that some tactics to get through that? Because it can be challenging for us too, and it can affect you in a negative way. It's hard to, like you said, getting that resistance all the time, that takes a toll on you. So how are some ways that you were able to navigate that and get through it?
Honestly, I don't know if it's a gift or a curse, but I just naturally have this ability to come in. Look, here's the thing. You got to walk in and know, like, I'm here and I know what I'm
Yeah.
doing. And so for me, the way that I navigate through those situations is you can't give me any resistance if I'm helping make your show better. If I am taking something off of your plate and
Mhm.
creating a sense of safe space for you to literally, because clients, they hover, they're at the table, right? They want to know every little thing versus doing the client stuff. The way that I've navigated through that is one tactic, first and foremost, is when I come into the role or even our pre production calls, right? When we're introducing the team, I will build a rapport. It's really important to build a rapport, right?
Agreed. Yeah.
Introducing myself, explaining what my role is, what to expect in working with me. Here's how I plan on coming on site, level setting, right? Like you kind of have to let people know, like, I know what I'm doing.
Right.
So before you even think that you about to, you know, come at me sideways, let's just go ahead and build the rapport right now. So I try to do that as much as possible before we even get on site.
Right.
Being present on as many pre-production calls as I possibly can and taking ownership in your role. Yeah, being vocal and talking your shit, right? And so normally by the time we get on site, they're like, oh, Brittany, she's good.
Right.
We ran through all the stuff in the pre-production calls. And even when I get on site, it's now introducing myself in person. And what I tend to do for shows is, hey, client, especially the ones that I predict to have a little bit of resistance is, hey, client, let's just before we get into Q to Qs and all that stuff, I'd love to just sit down with you and just walk through the script. So let's just walk through the show. Just I want to make sure that I understand everything that you expect to see in the show and make sure that I catch all of the things that you want to capture, right? That's building the rapport. So that's how I navigate through all of that. I get ahead, 2 steps ahead, and making sure that I'm answering questions and problem solving before you can try to blame me for something,
Right.
before you can come to me with something. And so that's how I navigate through that is it's really important in any situation, even if I'm working with black agencies, right? If I'm working with us,
Yeah.
I do the same thing, but you have to do it 10 times more intentionally with our counterparts and,
Correct.
folks that don't look like us because they expect us to fail. They expect us to not know what we're doing.
Yeah.
And they are shocked, which is like it blows my mind sometimes. And after the show, they're like, "Thank you so much. I didn't know that we needed your role."
Mhm.
And it's all of that, right? So for me, that's how I navigate through that. I try to take out the personal sentiments
Right.
and I try to lead with expertise and professionalism and show up in that way. I rarely have had instances where clients have legit like hurt my feelings because they're talking to a black woman crazy, right?
Right.
It's far few and in between. So if I just lead with what I know how to do, I do it well and professionalism, that usually tends to quell a lot of
Yeah.
the speculation and uncomfort, like, their uncomfortability with having me lead their show. So that's a tactic for me. Just build a rapport,
Yeah.
get ahead of stuff before they try to come to you first.
That's a great practice, just generally speaking, right? That's something you
Mhm.
should do on your shows in general, and it just helps everybody along the way. But like you said, we do have to approach it a little differently with our counterparts because of whatever, stereotypes they've placed on
Mhm.
us. Have you dealt with any stereotypical situations in these roles?
I have more in a show caller role. I mean, I think there was a situation where I was working with a client, and I kid you not, literally was the only black person. Okay, the only one, and this client, I already knew on the pre-production calls, I was like, this client is gonna be they're gonna be hell. And there probably was nothing that I could do to make it any better.
Sure.
But I did get a little passive aggressiveness, borderline rude, kind of like, almost questioning my ability or questioning like, oh, well, that's not what a little bit of that, like, well, that's not what we talked about. Or are you sure that's what we need to be doing? So I've dealt with that passive aggressiveness. That will make me uncomfortable. Doing that will make me extremely uncomfortable versus just say what it is that you want to do, or just say how you want to approach the situation. So I've been in situations like that where I got a little bit of rudeness and passive aggressiveness because I was the person leading the show. Usually that happens when they've never had a show caller on their show,
Right.
which blows my mind. So not only are you unfamiliar with what my role does, you're uncomfortable with me too.
Right.
So it's like, so I could count on my hands how many times I have had to deal with a little like snarkiness and passive aggressiveness and a little bit of rudeness. And I usually take that up with the client like the agency that's hired me.
Sure.
I don't really address it direct head on with that particular person. And it is what it is. I leave it there at the show.
Yeah.
I don't take that with me.
Absolutely. You can't, because if you did, then you would just be just miserable all the time and you wouldn't be able to get your job done and do your work. So,
Mhm.
sometimes you just walk in with your, not sometimes, all the time, walk in with your
All the time.
head held
Yes.
high, and whatever comes your way, just be like, Lord, we're going to get through
Yes.
this today.
Yes.
And it's good, to just, you got to pray you have a great team. Your team
Mhm.
is important in supporting you in these roles. So, with that being said, how have you seen the progression in seeing more, not just women of color, but people of color in these roles?
Mhm.
Because, like we said, they are more of a quote unquote higher up role. They're very integral roles of production.
If I'm honest, I see a little progression, but not a lot.
Hmm.
And the progression that I see, it's such a wide gap of progression. Like it took me to get where I'm at in my career and sort of build the reputation that I have and have, you know, repeated clients. And I'm not really in the space of having to vet clients
Sure.
anymore, right? So it took me a while to even get to where I am to get sort of the respect that I've gotten in the industry. And so the progression that I've seen looks like this for me. I have seen much more women in roles, meaning senior production manager roles, show caller roles. Now, maybe not black women, but women. And I've worked with other women that are show callers. So I do think, and I probably would say that I've seen it in the last maybe 2, 3 years. So I've seen it in the corporate space, trade show
Hmm.
space. I've seen a lot more women in those spaces. But then on the other end of the spectrum, where I see the progression is you look at like Jesse Collins, right? Jesse Collins Entertainment, and you look at a woman like Dion Harmon, who first black woman to ever produce, Super Bowl halftime, right? So like see how long that's so there's progression at it's like it's here and then it jump. I'd love to see all of us, a lot of us, the in between, right? The gap is such a drastic gap in opportunity for us. It's crazy. So shout out to Dion Harmon, for getting her flowers finally, and
Yeah.
Jesse Collins, Black production agency, killing it right now. Super Bowl, Grammys, Oscars, all the stuff. But Dion Harmon, specifically, Black woman who is just now getting her flowers, literally, and being recognized as the first Black woman to be a producer of a Super Bowl halftime show. Because prior to her, you know who it was?
Some white man.
Some white man, right? Some white man. So I'd love to see, and even if it's not executive producer, right? Just more of us in any role at that
Right.
level in general. It seems like it's starting to happen, but I think at a very, very moderate pace,
Hmm.
which is why it's so important for me to be on platforms like this to just share and inform us and
Yeah.
women in this industry that these roles do exist and there's places for us to sit at a very high level.
1,000%. Like I said before,
Yeah.
not in the music, you're not in the music space, but all of this still crosses over and it all transfers the same. So, where do we go from here? What do you think are some ways we can help escalate this? Because, like you said, it's taken a long time just to get here. So, like in 2024, what do you think are some ways we can help move the needle forward and a little
Mhm.
quicker?
That's a good question, and it's a part of my work to figure it out.
Mhm.
So, again, it's being on these platforms. It's, potentially I just had a friend of mine reach out to me today. She wants me to speak to some of her students about what I do in the industry, making it more prevalent. I know when I was in school, we didn't have majors for event production. That wasn't a thing.
Right.
But now I think there are a lot more universities that offer that as a major that you can get your degree in, and it should be offered at all schools, Black schools,
Yep.
HBCUs, right? Like, I just think it's more about awareness because I just don't think a lot of people know what a lot of these roles are. That you only know what you know, you only see what you see.
Exactly.
And so I just think to inform more, to make it more accessible,
Mhm.
students starting at the school level, college, doing summits or workshops. If people have any small level of interest, let's do a workshop. If this is something that's piquing your interest, let's do a workshop and walk you through all the different roles and what they entail and provide some resources. You should reach out to this person. They're looking for someone that's at a starting level. It's just networking, right?
Yeah.
It's just extending the olive branch. I look at you and I as an example. We are on LinkedIn all the time, like tagging each other, like,
Yes.
you
Absolutely.
know what I'm saying? Like, I like stuff you post and it's shared out to a multitude of masses of people, right? So the more these executives and big brands can see that you and I do what we do and do it well, I think that will start to help move the needle a little bit. And they'll start to look at us Black and brown women in this space like, I'd rather hire her. She's dope, got good energy, does what she does well.
Yes.
And I think we're just in a climate right now where a lot of brands are, they better get on the bandwagon,
Mhm. Yeah.
you know?
Absolutely. And I'm definitely an advocate for mentorship. I think that's really
hmm
important, especially for the young Black and brown people. Because, like you said, when we were in school, we didn't know anything about this. I know when I started out, and I've mentioned this on past episodes, like I just kind of stumbled into this because of a
hmm
friend was like, "Hey, you want to come do this thing at a festival with me?" And I'm like, "I don't know what any of that means, but let's go."
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And like you said, bringing more awareness to the industry and these roles so young people can understand that they have options and there's a multitude of things that they can do within the music industry slash the live event space. So to those listening out there, mentorship is very important. So
Yes.
reach out to your
Yes.
communities, talk to young people. And another thing is just being open too. And I feel like sometimes people can be a little, I don't want to say mean, but that's the word. Like they can be mean to people who are quote unquote green. I'm like, we were all green
Yeah.
at some point. Like we didn't just jump into this industry knowing everything. We are
Yeah.
continuously learning all the time. So if you don't have the bandwidth, that's one thing, right? But don't just push people away because they don't know something. Give people a chance, help them out, give them a little advice. All of that goes a long way.
Yeah. And to your point, look, shout out to all of the clients that I've ever worked with. Shout out to the friends that have put me on. Shout
Yeah,
out to look, I'm where I'm at and I still ask for mentorship. I'm still calling, my colleagues that are doing events that are much larger than what I'm doing now and asking questions.
same.
But it is super important and I'm super grateful for everyone that gave me a chance because this industry is one of the few industries where you really are not, there's no book.
Mhm.
You literally get thrown into it. You're going to fail. You have to fail literally to learn.
Yes.
And this is one of the few industries where that is the only way to do it is real life, just being on site doing it. And I'm super grateful for everybody that's ever given me an opportunity when I was super green and people that I reached out to that were open to me asking questions or taking a quick 30-minute chat. Super important. And it's played a major, major role in my career.
Yes,
So to your point, I wish more people, once you get to where you are, you got to reach back down and be a little bit more receptive to being
absolutely.
a teacher. Because what's the point, right? Don't be a gatekeeper.
Nope.
It's important to share the knowledge and teach and do all the things. So I definitely agree with you on that.
And we're not gonna be here forever.
Right.
We wanna leave a legacy behind so more
Mhm.
Black and brown people can come behind us and, again, just take up more space than we did, you
Mhm.
know?
Yes.
So I know you shared with us a little bit about the role of a show caller. If you were to give some advice to the young people out there, or just anybody who maybe want to just pivot, right? They're in one role in the event industry, maybe they want to pivot into show calling. What would be some practical steps, in your opinion, for them to take to start to get into that type of role?
Oof. I need to be telling myself this as I answer it, because girl.
Right. Unclear.
uh, um, wow. The best way to pivot, I would say, is, and I think this is what I did. Now that I'm thinking about it, I think this is the way that I pivoted from doing like stage management into show calling. Start small, small show. I say a small show, it could be something as small as a 1 day internal corporate. I don't even know what it would be, like a 1 day internal corporate event where they're maybe launching a product or something. And, the run of show or the content is minimal, like basically running off a slideshow, right?
Right.
Like that's a good start to transition. So if you can build a cue sheet off of simply pushing a PowerPoint deck and you can call that show, then you're in good shape. And I believe that's how I probably pivoted. I started very small because if I think back, I honestly, I can't tell you the first show that I show called. I can't tell you what show it was and what client had enough faith in me to do it, but I did.
Yeah.
And I think naturally your natural production instincts will kick in, right? But I think that's the best and easiest way to maybe transition and pivot is just start small.
Yeah.
Even on big shows, right? I still learn stuff. So
1,000%.
definitely don't go from not having ever done it to trying to go to a big stage, because that's where you'll run into some real true errors and mishaps. But start small
Yeah.
and get yourself familiarized with what a cue sheet is, how to call it, different terminology, how you communicate with all of your operators. Once you get the bases, the foundation of show calling elements, it's easy from there.
Yeah.
You just have to do more shows, do more of it, do bigger shows that have a little bit more layered elements, right? And you'll look up and be a well versed show caller, because I think that's how it happened
Yeah.
for me.
And I would also say stage managing is a fantastic way to
Oh
pivot
yeah.
because you're essentially doing that anyway, just on a different
Hmm.
level, right? So if
Hmm.
you have opportunities to be able to stage manage or work at your local venue, learning how to stage manage, that is a great place to start and to pivot into show calling.
Do you remember when you were show? Because I'm thinking, like, as a stage manager, you're typically listening to a show caller. Probably that's probably I also picked up some stuff subconsciously. Like, have you learned from listening to show callers as being a stage manager, like how other people call shows?
A little bit, and to be fair, honestly, I've gotten thrown into stage manager situations where I was essentially calling the show as well,
Hmm.
from stage,
Yep.
right? Not even from
Yep.
front of house, right?
Because that's the thing.
I have called shows from the deck numerous times on headset
Hmm.
and on walkie. Like, so I'm like, I was essentially doing 2 jobs. So let's be
Yes.
clear. I
Yes.
I was managing the stage and calling it at the same time. So I feel like I kinda just got thrown into it. And I think depending on the
Yeah.
event or how small it is, sometimes we've all done gigs where it's like, "Oh, okay, I'm doing 3 jobs today. Got it. Okay."
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's kind of how it happened for me, and again, to me, it's all kind of the same. Obviously, it's not, but I
Hmm.
enjoy all of it. It just I don't know, there's something about it. I'm like, I did that. I made that happen.
Yeah.
This show went
Yeah.
off because obviously because of the team, right? But because I
Hmm.
held the team down and kept us together and kept us afloat. And then all these people left with a smile on their
Yeah.
face and
Yeah.
enjoyed a fantastic show.
Yeah.
So I enjoy it. But the first time I realized I really enjoyed stage managing was it was Essence and it was Master P, and he had like everybody that had ever been on his label come, and nobody just had a grip on it. It was like 40 people. The set list was literally like probably 50 songs, and it was like 20 seconds here, 30 seconds
Mhm.
there, and like nobody knew who was performing on each song, and I was just the artist relations liaison for the group at the time. And then I just was like, "Okay, somebody give me the set list." And then I was just screaming out. I was like, "Who's on this song?
Yeah.
What's your name? Okay, stand right here." Da 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 da. And then the PM was like, "Yo," he was like, "You saved that set." And I was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
"Oh, really?" And then from there, that's how stage management really started for me. It was
Yeah.
just from accidentally taking charge
Mhm.
and jumping in and just helping. And I was like, "I see a void, let me help.
Yeah.
Like, I can help." And so that's another piece of advice I would throw out there is if you see something and you see how you can fit into a space and help support the team, bring it up to your higher up. "Hey, I see that maybe in this area we could do this differently."
Yes.
Don't be afraid to speak up and offer suggestions because you could just be saving the show.
Yeah. Wait, can we just talk about really quick? Because that story you just told me, I know you can probably relate to this. Can we just talk about being on shows with clients who feel like and don't think that they need to have the roles that they should have on site? And then inevitably you
Yeah,
end up stepping into those roles anyway. I've been on a few shows where I'm like, why didn't you think at for this show to be as complex as it is that you didn't need a stage manager? Or why didn't you think that you needed a show caller? Or why didn't you think that we needed comms for God's sake?
right. Like, how are we gonna
Right.
communicate?
But that your story just made me think about creating those roles because there are times where you could be on a show in one role and clients don't know any better. They're not really producers,
Right.
right? They have the brand and they're taxed to display something and put the brand on display, but they don't have any idea what they actually really need. That story is very interesting that you ended up just stepping in and filling the void because they needed a daggone stage manager. Clearly.
They did. Well, the crazy part is the person who was in charge of the group on the artist side, he was, like, on stage having the time of his life. So he wasn't even paying attention, and I was like, "Okay, I guess I'll do this." But no, it's a moment I will never forget, and it was amazing. I still have the set list. This was, like, years ago. I still have the
Wow.
set list in my storage. So it was legit, no lie, like 50 songs. It
Wow.
was it was crazy. So yeah, that was a good time. But you said something about you going into a show and then end up doing different roles. So how did you manage that after the fact when it's like, okay, my scope of work was this. Now, how do we adjust? How do we adjust the pay
Mm,
after the fact?
that's what it is, really. I have not dealt with that in my recent years in my career, but when I started going from stage manager and starting out as a show caller, I did have a couple of those instances. And if it's for one, a client that I enjoyed working with, and I would in fact want to work with them again in the space of freelancing, being an independent contractor, or if you work for an agency or whatever it is, you gotta advocate for yourself, right? So, I feel like in the
Yes.
beginning stages, I was super afraid to push back. I was super afraid to say no. I was super afraid to say the rate that I thought that I deserved because they're gonna tell me it's out
Mhm.
of budget, then I missed the whole opportunity. But I realized that you have to advocate for yourself. And so in those situations where you end up doing what's outside of your scope, literally, and to the viewers, when we're talking about scope, 9 times out of 10, we have signed an SOW, an IC agreement, and it lists out everything that we are scoped to do, what we're responsible for. And so I most times stay true to that. And I will even redline sometimes my SOWs because they'll miss things. I'm like, I probably should put this in here. But it's important to advocate for yourself. If you do end up post show realizing that you've done more than you were scoped to do, and it truly does exceed that, it
Yeah.
doesn't match truly what you agreed to, you have to say something. And for me, for a couple of clients that I work with, I enjoyed working with them, and I said to myself, if I ever would want to work with you again, I wouldn't want to feel like I'm being underpaid or undervalued. And so I can work in those dual spaces, I can work in those dual roles, but this is what it requires of me. It's more
Yeah.
time, right? And there's a different rate for that. And so we just have to have a conversation about it. So I don't deal with that much anymore now because I know the lay of the land a little bit. I come out the gate swinging like, let's talk about really what you expect
Listen,
from me to do. Is it one or two pre-production calls? You want me to build the cue sheet too? You want me to build out the talent call sheet? Everything is a la carte. Never be afraid to list out everything that you are asked to do, anticipate doing, and put a number to that. And the client, if they want someone that's of value, they'll adhere to it and they'll pay you what you're worth and what you ask for. Don't ever be afraid to push back. Or that's a big lesson for me because I used to be so scared, like, yep, I'll take $1,000 less, which is
yep.
crazy. Crazy.
It happens so much. It happens so much. And I think it happens to young women, just women in general. Like, we're already just undervalued,
Yeah.
right? And underpaid
Mhm.
and taken for granted. And so you really have to hone into your power when you come into these spaces. And like what the kids say, you got to stand on business,
Yes.
10 toes
10
down.
toes down. Girl, I'd be like, this for this flight, hotel, here's my Marriott
Yep.
number, a window
Yep.
seat, please.
Listen,
All of it.
listen. You already know. You already know. So don't be afraid to speak up. Now, with that, because I feel like there's levels to it, right? Like you shouldn't be afraid to speak up, but at the same time, I think you have to be aware of where
Mhm,
you are, right?
mhm,
And what level you're at,
mhm.
right? And even as someone who's starting out, I don't agree with people who are fresh to the game that they should be taken advantage of. But also at the same time, when you're fresh to the game, you probably can only ask for so much.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
what would be some advice to people they're not 10 years in the game, maybe 3 years in the game, or just starting out? How can they level out speaking up for themselves without overstepping the boundaries as someone who's still fairly new to the industry?
The first practical thing to do, this is information that you can find on the internet. There are standard industry rates that you can Google, right? So you can sort of find your baseline for whatever the role is. So there's a standard industry hourly rate, weekly rate for a stage manager, for a show caller, for an EP, for a PA.
If it's music specific, it'd be a little different.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I agree. They're slightly different. The rates do fluctuate a bit, but generally speaking, right, there's a rate that you
Yes.
can use as a baseline, right? So if
Mhm.
the standard industry rate for a PA, if you're in the festival space, is, you know, 30 an hour, if you're 2 years in the game, you know, shoot for it. Go for that. But,
Yeah.
if you're new and they're like, nah, we only have in the budget. And that's a big thing too that we come up against in this space, is asking for what you want to ask for, but also dealing with the client sort of like, this is the budget and this is what we have.
Right.
And so sometimes you will get that I get that sure rate, but we only have 25 or we only have 20 an hour. And depending on where you are, I think that's how you can gauge if that's acceptable for you, right? For me, there's a number that I'm just not going below just because of where
Period.
I'm at, period, right? So if you don't
Listen.
have the budget, holler at me when you do, right? I have the right to say that based on where I am. But coming up
Correct.
new in the
Yeah.
game, right? You have to find the balance of like, okay, and a part of that is taking the 20 an hour and showing up on site, showing your worth, showing what you can do, and showing your value so that you do have the opportunity to go back for the next festival to say, hey, you remember me? I worked last year, and you do a good job. They remember you. Well, I'm 3 years in now,
Mhm.
this is my experience. And, let the resume speak for yourself. Now I get to say that my rate is 35 an hour. So it's
Yeah.
a little bit of knowing where you are, yes, knowing what the average rate is to either put yourself above, below, stay at it. and then letting your experience speak for itself. There's no way that
Yeah.
I could send my resume to someone right now and they would think that it's okay to offer me any particular rate below what I'm asking for, right? I think it's just a multitude of those little things. You have to build relationships and you got to start somewhere. You kind of have to show up and show what you can do and build your resume because you do sometimes have to take those 15 an hour, 20 an hour just to get it on your resume, right? It may not even be about the money, quite frankly. It's just the experience, and you need a lot of that in the industry. Having that on your resume is what will eventually get you the roles that you want to say that you've done this festival for 4 years straight, right? Now,
Yeah.
never mind that they paid you $10 an hour, but you know how to do the work now. So that's more valuable in the long run, I would say, to be able to stand firm in what you think that you're worth and be able to call out your price point. So it's a little bit of started from the bottom. Now we here, you know.
Absolutely. And I would say within reason
Right,
though, because
right.
the times have changed, right? This ain't 2001
Hmm.
where you were doing 10 people's jobs for
Right.
one person's salary,
Yeah.
right? Like, yeah, sometimes you're gonna have to do a little bit more for the pay that you're getting, but again, think of that as, okay, I'm here, I'm in this space, this is more experience for me, and I'm still getting paid to do my job. And as long as you're not overexerting yourself, you're not hurting
Hmm.
yourself, go for it.
Yeah.
It's if it's not messing with your mental,
Yeah.
okay, do the little extra whatever,
Uh,
just do it.
yeah.
But as long as it's within reason, you're getting something from it,
Hmm.
you're learning from it, and you can use it as a tool later on, then yeah, I say it's okay to take those gigs that are a little underpaid. Cause and let's be frank, as you're going through this industry, whether on the music side or just the live event
Hmm.
side, like you're going to do gigs that are like, damn, I did all of that for that little bit of pay?
Yeah.
That's crazy,
Yeah.
that's crazy.
Yeah.
But then you're like, "You know what? I met some amazing people. I had an awesome time. I heard a great conference or I listened to some really amazing music, and I have a foot in the door
Hmm.
for the next event."
If I can add, like, there's that side of doing that and building resume and getting the experience, but then also when you do get to a point, like I have gotten to a point now, unfortunately, where because I allowed the client to pay me what they pay me and I end up doing more,
Mhm.
the idea of me asking for more sounds ludicrous to them, right? So I've been in a
Mm.
couple situations where I've had to stop working with longstanding clients because they don't appreciate the value and they don't
Right.
think that they should maybe after 3 years pay me what I'm asking for. And that hurts my heart a little bit, right? Because being in the space, right, every
Yeah.
gig matters and you don't ever want to let go of clients that are on your roster, but I think more than anything, it sometimes you have to teach people, right? You have to teach some clients like, listen, thank you for the opportunity, but I can't work with you anymore.
Yeah.
It's no longer
Yeah.
conducive to anything for me at this point, not monetarily, not anything. So that's another thing in navigating in this space and being in these roles and in this industry is you having to say no and passing some
Yeah.
shit up because you got to do that
Absolutely.
sometimes.
Listen, the spirit of discernment, okay?
Yes, yes, because they'll run you ragged if you let them. You know, you
1,000%.
know.
No problem. No problem. Well, Brittany, this has been amazing. Before we go, do you have any last minute advice that you'd like to share or add for everybody?
Last minute advice. It sounds cliche, but if you have any inkling of this is something that you want to do in any capacity in the industry on the music side, live event side, I would say don't be hesitant to put yourself out there. There's so many amazing resources and platforms. I live and die by LinkedIn. There's so many resources now available to you
Yeah.
to pursue the things that you're curious about, and there's a lot of amazing opportunities out there to be had and to get. And so I would say believe in yourself, pursue the things even if you think that you're not qualified for it. Reach out to these clients anyway, send the message, send
Yeah.
send the email. It's gotten me into a lot of rooms and spaces that I wasn't necessarily planning on it, but because I just had the audacity to shoot the email or send the DM, it takes you a long way further than you might think. So that would be my advice. In this industry as a whole, in events and entertainment and production, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And so
Yes.
you be really intentional about building your network and the people that you meet along the way. Every event you work, make sure you get a contact from somebody because it does sometimes come full circle. So that would be my advice. And I think that you'll find success and some longevity and consistency in your career if you stick to doing those best practices.
Amazing. I love that. And then tell us, what are some fun, amazing things you're working on right now?
Ooh. What I am working on right now, I'm going to be heading to Miami for Basel. So I'm going to be doing a United Masters event. They're a longtime client of mine, so I always look forward to doing events with them. So I'll be in Miami in December for that, and then I know I've shared my like ultimate goal is to be the second Black female to ever produce Super Bowl. So
Let's
I'm
go.
still working towards that, but in the meantime, I will be producing a brand experiential activation this coming Super Bowl in the fan experience space. So not quite yet directly Super Bowl live TV Super Bowl halftime show, but I am working on an exciting project for a client for Super Bowl in New Orleans. New
You
Orleans.
already know. You already know.
Yes, yeah. So those are a couple things that I have coming up, and obviously, you and I both know we're working to book ourselves out for the new year. So I'm
Absolutely.
sure some great things will come down the pipeline for me. But yeah, a lot of exciting stuff is happening.
Well, this was amazing. Brittany, thank you so, so much
Thank
for being
you.
here and taking the time to chat with us. And good luck with everything.
Thank
And
you.
thank you all for listening to the Life is a Tour podcast.